All right. So welcome to the Brains and Banter podcast. We are just so thrilled to have Green Party leader of Canada, Annamie Paul, just one of my absolute heroes. The students that are part of this podcast, they all just send their love and appreciation. We just adore you and everything you're doing for Canada. So you are the best. But I think I wanted to start off with a more difficult question, just because we've been really shocked to hear about the 215 unmarked graves discovered in Kamloops, and then later in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and then just yesterday, July 12th, just off Vancouver Island. And I think, we're just all wondering how we deal with this, and sort of what steps you are planning to take towards reconciliation, and how we can really get moving on all of that.
Yeah, well, it is. Every time I'm asked a question about the discoveries of the unmarked graves, it's like trying to find words to communicate the unspeakable. Actually, the first time that I tried to find the words, I couldn't. And so I actually asked my friend Jody if I could use her. She had written something really fantastic, summing up her feelings about these discoveries. And so I asked if I could borrow her words, and I did. And I guess actually that's made really good segue to the approach that I take and the Green Party takes to reconciliation, which is really that Indigenous leadership should speak for itself and should lead us in this process, as opposed to being consulted about decisions that are taken on their behalf, as opposed to us guessing what would be the right thing to do. So one of the things I'm most proud of being able to do in this role is to lend my voice and my platform consistently to Indigenous peoples when they have something to say that's not being heard, and to move aside whenever possible to make space for their leadership. In this case, Indigenous peoples, whether it's through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, calls to action, whether it's through the calls for justice from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report. Indigenous peoples have been very clear about what they want to see. We don't have to guess. We just have to do. We just have to do and be guided by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation peoples. So that is what we want to do. And when we list recommendations, and we did after the discoveries, every single one of those was a direct recommendation from one of those reports or from the Indigenous peoples, Indigenous leaders that we have been speaking to. So it's very simple. Let's fulfill those calls to action. Let's fulfill those calls for justice. Let's make sure that we have true self-determination. Let's make sure that we have true nation-to-nation relationships, and that those are respected. That's it. That's what needs to be done, and that's what there's still not enough political will to do.
Absolutely, exactly. So well said. Yeah, that's exactly it. Just we've through the podcast been speaking to some Indigenous leaders and musicians, and it's exactly that. Just step aside, listen to their voices, which kind of will lead into my other question, are so integral to the climate crisis too, right? With sort of that respect for the land, and the ability to respect the earth and recognize that our psyche is the Earth's psyche, and that whatever we do to the planet is going to affect our own mental health. And so so would you say that there's like an interconnected idea there, that you, in speaking with Indigenous voices, that's also key to addressing the climate crisis? Also, this is Naz. Naz is a former student and a spoken word poet, and so absolutely brilliant. So she's jumping in to ask a question too. But I guess right now, the question is sort of, what are your plans to address the climate crisis, and are Indigenous voices key to that, as well as to reconciliation?
Yeah. Hi, Naz, and you're a spoken word pro, so you must know Naz also, right? Yeah, okay. If you haven't listened to it yet, folks, Vini Vedi Vici from the late 90s, one of the best albums ever. Okay,
Well,
back to the question. Yes, there is a lot of grief, and I think it's so important for those of us who have maybe are further along in the cycles of grief related to our environmental degradation, related to the climate crisis, to be patient and understanding for those who aren't, because people come to it at different times, and I think everyone who has had the moment where their eyes were opened, they remember the moment, and it comes at different stages. I mean, for me, I was in my 30s before it really, I really fully understood what was at stake. And it is painful, it can be very painful to realize how much has been lost, that some of the changes are irreversible, that we're not talking anymore about total prevention, but a lot of what we're talking about now has to be about mitigation and adaptation. For my children, I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old, understanding that the world for them is never going to be like it was for me. And there are some things that I will be describing to them almost as myths and legends because they've disappeared. And so helping people to work through that grief, and then empowering them, that's really the thing. And then giving people a sense of hopefulness, of purposefulness as well about what can be done. That is really the key. And that is where the joy comes from. That is how you help to recover from the grief. So we are talking about that. We're talking about what a green recovery could look like, how it can help us to live within our means in a way that is sustainable, in a way that provides true dignity to everyone, true equity for everyone. That is exciting, that is exciting. And I'll tell you what else I think is really exciting. The possibility that we could be part of a generation of people in this country and around the world that actually put the brakes on runaway global warming, because then we become legends,
True.
Then they tell stories about us.
That's a good motivation.
Remember that generation of people and remember what they did. They will write songs about us,
history,
and poems, right? And so that is what I want. I want to be part of a legendary generation of people in Canada. So that is exciting to me. That is a way for me of dealing with the grief and the panic and the paralysis that I used to feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you kind of feel like, young people like Nas have like a really important, powerful role, eh? Like I still believe that. Yeah. What do you think, Nas? 100%. Do you agree?
100%. If you're a spoken word poet, absolutely. I have been just sending out the clarion call to creatives, just telling them that this is their moment. Anything extraordinary that we've done throughout history, really in terms of mass mobilization, has always had artists and creatives right at the center of it, always. And this is one of those moments. We have the science, we have the data, we have the policies even. What we need is all of that to be communicated in a narrative that really gets people excited, really gets them mobilized. And that is absolutely where creatives, where artists come in. They have to give word and expression to that feeling, so that people can react and act. So it's a big burden. I acknowledge that it is a heavy burden to bear, but this is the time. This is the time of the artist. Absolutely.
Heck yes. We totally agree. Nas, you just have a small responsibility then.
Just to save the planet,
Yeah, that's nothing.
You have your breakfast first, have a good night's sleep, and then wake up and save the planet.
I mean, if I've got amazing women like you supporting me through it all, I feel like the artists out there, like I'm 20 years old. I'm gonna be turning 21 this year, and to have leaders like you in such high places is so inspiring for me. I actually wanted to ask you, I don't know if Bryn, you've had the opportunity to ask, but I know that you're a first generation Canadian, and I am as well. And I feel like that this is a little more of a personal question. How do you think that's like influenced like your life or like your decisions, or just like how was that for you? Because I know that as a woman of color, it's not easy, 100%. I know it's not easy. So I would love to hear that side of things.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have always been happy to be who I am. That's the first thing. I have to say I've never wished that I was someone else or born in a different skin, and that's a great thing. Um, the one thing that I always tell people is that in politics, and why it's so important to have different people, a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of lived experiences in politics, is that it absolutely informs your work. The policies that you champion, the way that you design policies, all of that is affected. In my case, being first generation, means a lot. First of all, my family come from small islands, and those islands are, they're low-lying islands. They're at tremendous risk from rising sea levels, and so that's something that I take with me. They come from tiny islands as well. My mom's island, there are 9,000 inhabitants, and everybody was a farmer. I mean, it doesn't matter. Even the lawyers, everyone had a farm because you grew what you ate. That's the kind of place that it was. And so being connected with the natural world and understanding your interdependency is definitely something that comes from my family's culture, my experience with their culture, our culture, and then also the interconnectedness of people and the interdependency. Because when you come from a very small place, every person has to help every other person. That's the only way that you survive, making sure that if you have and someone else doesn't, you help them. And next time when you don't have, they'll help you. So that informs it a lot. And for me, being a Black woman, my mom came from an island where everyone was Black. And so there was no complex of inferiority there. Everyone looked just like you, from the least affluent to the most affluent. And so she expected me to behave and to seek opportunities with that in mind, that I was not inferior to anyone. So that helps a lot. I could go on about this. I mean, these questions, each one of these could be the entire podcast. But for me, it is something that I know enriches my work as a leader and as someone seeking to be a policy decision maker, and it should for you. But it definitely also, there's no question that it is a big challenge. The system was not designed for us. It has not made space for us. And I'm always told I need to play the game as it exists, even though I had nothing to do with creating those rules. And they certainly were not designed to welcome me. But we need to be in those places, and we need to find support, as you said, amongst each other. So that we can occupy those places and change them for the better, because they need to change.
Woo! Does that resonate, Naz? Yes.
Amazing. I goosebumps.
Yes, me too. I know. Crying a little bit.
It's true though, right? Jody Wilson. It's been really a wonderful thing to get to know her and have conversations with her. And, her letter, if you haven't read it, I really encourage you to. The letter that she wrote when she explained why she decided to leave politics. And, she and Mumalak, right, left within just a few weeks of each other. Mumalak, for anyone who's listening doesn't know, she is still until the end of this, until the next election, the member of parliament, the only female Inuit member of parliament, and the first. And she had enough. They both just had enough. And they both said the same things about why the experience was so difficult and why they felt they needed to invest their effort, their time elsewhere. And so we can't keep getting pushed out of politics and not being able to contribute our service, our public service. So I'm trying to, again, occupy this space and stay here. We can't have three of us in 1 month, right?
That's true. It's so hard to work it within such a fundamentally racist system too. We talked to Professor Kayandi Andrews, the idea that the West is founded on oppression and racism. And I think that's so amazing that you are sticking with it. Naz, jump in, baby.
So my question is, what is your plan for the education system? Do you have a plan to address student debt? And do you believe that higher education should be free?
Oh boy.
Easy
So, I mean, you're
Real
asking
easy
me
question, easy
all
work.
my favorite questions. The short answer is yes. I mean, for a very long time, the Green Party has supported universal access to post-secondary education. What that means concretely is we believe that post-secondary education should be tuition-free. I will even go further and say that we really should be looking at a system of stipends for students as well. And before anyone says, the inevitable things that we can't afford it and so on, just look across the world, and not just the developed world, but also the developing world as well.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find dozens of countries where tuition is either free or extremely low cost. I mean, it's really not a barrier to entry. And it's a reflection of the fact that education is a fundamental human right. And we have recognized that it is. And we also know that it is increasingly difficult, not yet totally impossible, but virtually impossible to be able to be a fully functioning member of society without at least 2 or 4 years of some kind of post-secondary education. And that means apprenticeships too, and college. It doesn't just mean university. There was a time you only needed to graduate from elementary school to be able to get a job and to be able to be civically literate. Those days have gone. And so education needs to keep up. And what we've seen in this pandemic is that marginalized peoples are falling further and further behind. They're the ones that, we are the ones that lost our jobs first. And we're the slowest to come back, the ones that had the most debt to begin with. And we have created such a distortion between different students that it is really impacting our future. And so we believe concretely, this summer we wanted a return of the student emergency benefit. The jobs are just opening up now, and it means that there are students who have spent almost 2 months unemployed. The unemployment rate in May for students was almost 25%. And that's the difference. I needed to work every second of every summer to be able to pay for my education. And this is when it costs about $1,500 to go to university. So we wanted that back. We wanted we want to see tuition-free post-secondary education. We want to see forgiveness of federal student loans as well. These are just basic things. Go ask Germany, or Denmark or France, or, any of the countries that have very strong economies and at the same time manage to make education accessible to all of their post-secondary students. We need to be ambitious. We need to believe that Canada can be a leader in these areas, because there's no reason that we can't, but it's up to all of us to insist that all of our political leadership make it happen. That's all that's left is just the political will.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can imagine anything into being and alter reality. And then you just need, I think Russell Brand said something about how faith is possibility, right? If we don't believe that we can do it, it's not going to happen. But if all of us, the collective consciousness comes together and we can change the world, we can do it.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every extraordinary thing that humans have ever done, it starts with the belief that it can be done. And in our case, we have been settling too much. There's no reason if Germany has free post-secondary education that we can't. Why can't we? Why are we not as capable, as ambitious as German citizens are? Of course not. If the European Union can set a target of, I think their target was 55%, or the UK can set a target of 78% greenhouse gas emissions reductions, why can't we? I mean, are we less capable? Are we less able? Are we less ambitious for the future of the planet? Absolutely not. So we need to believe it, and then believe that that we can have leadership that makes it possible across parties. Also, I want to really stress, we can disagree about a lot of things, but these things are nonpartisan in my mind. The education of everyone in this country, the climate, a dignified life, a complete social safety net, reconciliation. These are not political issues. These are things that we should all be able to rally around across party lines. So that's what we're trying to do.
And then we'll have you as prime minister and the world will be amazing.
Or Naz, I mean, look, I'm here to, I'm here to do what I can, and try to, again, make it easier for the next person after me as well, to do what they can. I definitely am not planning to remain in politics my entire life. I see politics as a vocation. You do it for a certain number of years, you give it your all, and then you make a place for someone else to make their contribution. So I hope that I'm here long enough to make a contribution, and then I'm looking forward to the next person.
Amazing. Thank you. I will let you go right away. This has been amazing. Naz, did you want to add one thing before we go?
No, just thank you for your time. Once again, I apologize for coming in late, but thank you so much for your time. And I hope that we're able to have a conversation again in the future, because
with pleasure, absolutely. And thank you to both of you. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to the next time. Yeah, please make sure you invite me back, okay?
Yay. Well, thank you again. So grateful. Can't wait to talk soon. Mwah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.